The 1950s were a time of rock and roll, Cold War tensions, and sweeping cultural change. From TV sitcoms that redefined comedy to space launches that redefined the future, this decade shaped the world we live in today. Let's explore the 10 most iconic cultural moments of the 1950s. Let's start with the moment most of us remember. It was when Elvis Presley appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show in 1956. 60 million people tuned in, an audience bigger than the population of many countries. His style, a mix of gospel, country, and rhythm and blues, shocked conservative parents but electrified teenagers. Did you know that his first big hit, Heartbreak Hotel, was inspired by a newspaper story about a lonely man's suicide? By 1957, Elvis was so popular that Graceland, his Memphis mansion, became a tourist attraction in its own right. This brings us to rock and roll. It wasn't just music, it was a cultural earthquake. Chuck Berry gave teenagers guitar-driven anthems like Johnny B. Good. Little Richard brought flamboyance and energy that broke barriers of race and gender norms, and Buddy Holly pioneered the two-guitar rock band setup copied by the Beatles. What's less known is that Alan Freed, a Cleveland DJ, was one of the first to popularize the term rock and roll. He even organized racially integrated concerts, making music a unifying force during a segregated era. From music to movies. In Rebel Without a Cause, James Dean embodied the struggles of a generation caught between tradition and modernity. His casual style, a white t-shirt, jeans, and leather jacket, became the teen uniform of the decade. Dean's sudden death in a car crash at age 24 only magnified his mystique. Little known but very interesting fact, the car he died in, nicknamed Little Bastard, was rumored to be cursed and responsible for multiple accidents when its parts were resold. How about television? I Love Lucy was more than slapstick. It changed TV forever. Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz ran their own production company, Desilu, making Lucy one of the first women to head a major studio. The show pioneered reruns, making it profitable long after its original broadcast. A fun detail, the episode featuring Lucy's on-screen pregnancy attracted 44 million viewers, 10 million more than President Eisenhower's inauguration. How did the 1950s make a child's dream come true? On July 17, 1955, Walt Disney opened Disneyland in Anaheim, California. The opening was chaotic. Rides broke down, counterfeit tickets doubled the expected crowd, and women's high heels sank into freshly poured asphalt. But Disney's dream prevailed, and families finally had a park built on storytelling and imagination. Within a year, millions had visited, and Disneyland became a symbol of 1950s optimism and the American dream. Speaking of dreams, they can also take us to a place not yet traveled. When the Soviet Union launched Sputnik on October 4, 1957, it was a wake-up call for America. The beeping satellite, the size of a basketball, orbited Earth every 96 minutes, and people could hear its signal over radios. Fearing they were falling behind, the US created NASA in 1958 and poured billions into science education. The space race wasn't just about rockets. It shaped movies, toys, even school curricula, inspiring a whole generation to look to the stars. On the medical front, polio was one of the most feared diseases of the early 20th century, paralyzing thousands of children each year. Dr. Jonas Salk's vaccine, released in 1955, brought hope. Kids were made to line up to get vaccinated. Remarkably, Salk refused to patent the vaccine, saying, "Could you patent the sun?" A decision that may have cost him millions but saved countless lives. By the end of the decade, polio cases dropped dramatically. We can't forget this legendary movie, The 7-Year Itch, where Marilyn Monroe stood over a subway grate as her white dress blew skyward. That image became one of the most famous in movie history. The scene was filmed in New York at night and drew thousands of spectators whose cheering ruined the sound and forced reshoots. The moment captured Monroe's mix of innocence and sensuality, but it also strained her marriage to Joe DiMaggio, who hated the public spectacle. Today, it remains one of cinema's most enduring images. Can you guess the one thing most of us experienced? Drive-in movies, of course, By the mid-1950s, drive-in theaters were everywhere with over 4,000 across the US. The drive-ins weren't just about movies. They were date spots, family outings, and hangouts for teens and hot rods. Some even had playgrounds and miniature trains for kids. Drive-ins reflected America's booming car culture and suburban growth, making them a true symbol of the decade. Fun fact: the biggest drive-in ever built could fit more than 2,500 cars at once. Our final important cultural moment changed America forever. In 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Brown v. Board of Education that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. It was a landmark victory for the civil rights movement. Thurgood Marshall, who argued the case, went on to become the first African-American Supreme Court justice. While integration was met with resistance in many states, the decision inspired the Montgomery bus boycott, sit-ins, and marches that defined the 1960s. It proved that cultural change often starts in the courtroom. The 1950s gave us rock and roll, space dreams, movie icons, and civil rights milestones. It was a decade of transformation, one that still echoes in our culture today. Which of these moments do you think best defines the 1950s? Let us know in the comments below.